Probably owls are one of the least understood of all of our animals or birds.
Kay and Larry McKeever live in retirement on an estuary of the Jordan River midway between Hamilton and St. Catharines, Ontario. For the past 10 years, they have devoted their lives to the care and rehabilitation of injured owls.
Sheba. We have about 88 owls on the premises just at the moment. Of course, the number varies. We have gone up to around 100 at one time, and of that, we have a pretty good batting average. We are able to release about 40% now. Come on there, Fido. I'm after you. Come on, kid. Yeah, I'm after you, Fido. Come on. You're the one I want. Oh, now don't get your feet all messed up in here, kid. I use the net just to cut down on the amount of time it takes to catch the owl, and that reduces the panic level that she has a chance to work up to. The faster, the better. My trouble is sometimes, like now, I've got her talons all caught up in the net. You've got kind of sore wings, haven't you? Had an impact injury, probably hit a plane or a wire, something like that. I'm hoping we can let them go this year. Most attractive little owls. It's the only way to carry an owl. I've brought an injured snowy and injured great horned owl 2, 3, even 4 hours in a car on their back without any trouble at all. They just, look at that, lie very still. It just seems incredible that this is the owl that was flapping around, doesn't it? They're not in a trance or anything. I don't know why it is, but they feel very calm that way. And mind you, he's keeping an eye out for the first chance of escape all the time. He's not that dumb.
Huh. This was rather an amusing incident. After a lecture which Kay had been giving about our owl project, a little old lady came up to her and said, the thing that I'm wondering about is how do injured owls find you? So since then we've always pictured an injured owl limping along the highway saying, how far's the McKeevers?
We have, at the moment, 20 outside flight cages. The size of the cages really gauge the size of the owl that they will contain. They're also designed for certain species of owls, and the whole object is that the bird have an opportunity to learn to fly again, to use its wings, and to, in the case of injured legs, to have enough velocity that when it lands on a branch, it has to learn to grip it again. I really started about 10 years ago with my first injured owl, not really realizing what I was getting into, and Larry and I have only been married for about 7 years, and he had no idea what was going to come. Poor devil.
Do you find that you can pretty well mimic their calls?
Yes, I get so used to them. This is why Larry says I'm turning into an owl. I get so used to them, I go out and I hoot back and forth with them.
What would an Arctic owl sound like now?
You really want to hear it? Well, they have a kind of a strange call. The Arctic owls, just the male does the call, and he gets up in a kind of a prominent position, and he says, and you can hear it a long way away.
But what's your reaction when you see your wife out there hooting?
He thinks I'm turning into an owl.
I wouldn't say she thinks like an owl, really, but she's intensely interested in owls. There's no doubt about that.
He's just being generous. What he really means is that I'm obsessed.
I sometimes think the owls come first in her mind.
In fact, he figures that when he goes, he's going to be good owl meat.
Why the devotion?
I think that Larry's devoted because he couldn't get away from it, and I'm devoted because I'm just crazy about owls. I'm just fascinated by them. I feel they've been largely overlooked. I think they're largely misunderstood, and I fear that they may one day be pretty well eliminated. This is a little saw-whet owl. It's our smallest species in eastern North America, and it was apparently hit by a car this morning. It was brought in dead, and neck was broken, and there are a lot of feathers taken off the top of the head. And we just wanted to show it to you because it has a really remarkable ear aperture. When you think of the face of the owl, and in fact the head of the owl being so small, there is the ear aperture. One of the problems with all owls is that they're rockets because they have such a small skull, and so much of the skull is taken up with that ear aperture there, and the eyeball, that blue surface in behind there is the back of the eyeball, and there just isn't room in all of that for muscles to control movement of the eyes themselves. For this is a very sophisticated ear because this is a little bird that's almost entirely nocturnal and hunts almost entirely by his hearing. I'd say that in general, owls hunt by sound. There are only one or two exceptions in North America. The snowy would be one, the little pygmy owl on the west coast would be another. They pursue prey by sight, but all other owls only use their eyes to avoid obstacles.
Would you recommend an owl as a house pet?
No, I really wouldn't, because first of all, they do make messes, and you have to be prepared for that. I think an immaculate housekeeper would go crazy with an owl as a pet. We refer to this washroom as Tiglet's washroom because this is where she has her daytime roost. We have to take some of the towels out of the bathroom at night because Tiglet has a high old time landing on the towel and pulling out the threads one at a time. This is just another of the hazards of keeping an owl.
Is Tiglet a boy or a girl?
We somehow refer to her as a she because we have all her life just thought of Tiglet as a girl, but I'm beginning to think now that she's adult that she has a male note in her voice.
What is she doing now?
Tiglet's just panting now. It's just the way that owls get extra oxygen into their lungs when they're hot. They do this at times of stress, but in the summertime we often see them sitting around outside panting like that. It's just a weepy sleepy. Come on, Weeper. I've had Weeper about 4.5 years. Unfortunately, for an imprinted owl, it associates with people, and if I release Weeper, of course if I didn't feed her, she'd go and hang around someone else's house, and then someone else's, and sooner or later, of course, somebody would shoot her because she'd be acting so strangely. And anyway, there'd be no point in releasing an owl that's imprinted on people because they'd never have a relationship with another owl, so they wouldn't breed, they wouldn't mate. In fact, Weeper thinks she's a people, basically. She has no relationship with other owls. To her, they are the alien species, and I'm the sort of her own species. In breeding season, if I bring any food out, she really gets quite worked up because that's the sort of typical breeding approach of a male to a female owl, is bringing her a nice, tasty morsel of mouse. Weeper, of course, wants to breed with me, which is a bit awkward. Yes, I know, Weeper.
Kay, who is the owl behind Larry?
The owl behind Larry is a spectacled owl from Central America. We don't know her exact origin, but that is the range of the bird. And we call her Granny, I suppose for obvious reasons. It may even be a he for all we know. We don't know the sex. But the spectacles, we've just always called the owl Granny. This bird's been imprinted on people, and she's one of the only 2 house pets we have. People wonder why we give owls names and think perhaps it's a bit cute or corny. But it's really for our own help, because when Larry and I are talking about our various owls, it's a lot easier for us to say Granny than to say that spectacled owl down in the such and such a cage. We don't give names to the birds that are going to be released.
The owl is always called the wise old owl. Is the owl a smart bird?
I don't think it's any smarter than any other bird, and I doubt if it's quite as smart, perhaps, in human judgment as a hawk. I don't think the owl is really as wise as it looks. I think some people who sit back and say nothing and blink their eyes are supposedly wise too, but they're really not.
What do you call a group of owls?
What do I call them?
What he calls them is unprintable. But traditionally, a group of owls is called a parliament of owls, whereas a group of geese is a gaggle of geese. I think owls have a number of special characteristics that other birds of prey don't have. They have 7 extra vertebrae in the neck, which gives them this very maneuverable head.
Contrary to what some people think, they can't twist their own heads off, but they can turn about 270 degrees. And people who have ever observed an owl will see that the owl has a peculiar motion of the head like this, and it seems to be a form of triangulation, the same way that our eyes triangulate naturally by turning in the socket.
Is Granny going to take off? She's going to poo on Larry.
Larry, can you house train an owl?
I don't think so. I don't think we could ever teach an owl to... As much as all right, she stays up there, I guess.
Does Granny feel safe up there?
Granny feels very safe up there. She's higher than any of us.
Is this a characteristic of an owl?
Yes, all owls like to be up high. They feel that if they can look down on something, that is their natural station. And they like that nice feeling of being up above and surveying everything down below. Woo-hoo! This is the European eagle owl. This is the biggest owl in the world. This owl is going to be a predator on large rodents, big rats, groundhogs. It'll also prey on hares and rabbits and skunks and probably small foxes and wolves. They really are called crepuscular hunters in that they hunt in the evening and the morning rather than the sort of middle of the night. People don't think they hunt until dark, but that isn't quite so. As soon as the light is reduced somewhat, they start hunting. The coloration of the eyes is a very, very rich color, as you can see, but they're quite unique. We don't have anything in North America with an eye that color in the owl family. It's really quite spectacular. Now, that is the baby, if you can believe it. That was born this year in the end of May. I haven't heard the baby hoot yet, so I'm not sure from the hoot which sex it is. These are the parent birds. The tragedy is they have been almost exterminated as wild birds in Europe. One of the interesting things about these owls, for being the biggest owl in the world, it has one of the smallest songs. And you would expect something really monumental out of an owl that size, but all they say is ooh-hoo. And it's really rather amusing. Ooh-hoo. Well, this is a little elf owl, probably weighing about 40 grams. It's our smallest owl in the world, and they are native to the Sonora Desert region. They live in holes in the saguaro cactus there. They prey at night on crickets, grasshoppers, small lizards, occasionally very small rodents.
And what would happen to that owl if you let him go?
I think we'll just try letting this one go and see which way he goes. Black and blue when we got her. She came from the airport, and I don't really know how an injury like that could have been caused by impact with a vehicle, airplane or a car or something, because all down the side of her head, down one flank, one leg, and one wing, and her wing hung down uselessly. Really, literally, her skin was black and blue. We're hoping we might be able to release her in the spring migration. I think owls in general are not amorous as we think of it. Owls tend to mate for life and retain a mate through thick and thin, provided one of them isn't killed, of course. And an owl that has been deprived of its mate will usually wait a couple of years before it picks up another mate somewhere. In the meantime, some single owls have been known to sort of adopt a pair-bonded pair and assist in the upbringing of their young, rather in the position of an aunt or an uncle, or a sort of a distant relative. Their owls are excellent parents. They would attack anything in defense of their young. They'd attack a tank. Oh, no. See, it doesn't really even bite me all that hard. No, you don't, do you?
Okay, Mara, come on, we'll all go for a walk. Hey, Tazy, Toto, come back here. Come on, back. Come on, stop your barking. Come on, Morag, you're a good dog anyway. So many people just wring their hands about the depletion of wildlife, but don't do anything more about it. And after all, even though we may not be affecting the total number of the species, we are at least doing something positive, and I think this is the thing we have to keep in mind. Come on, Morag. Come on, Toto. Come on, Morag, come on.
Anyway, I feel that why wait until disaster strikes a species before we start to worry about it? If we can, with this opportunity here, find out all kinds of things about them, factors affecting breeding and food supply, all kinds of things, even how to treat these various broken bones. When the time comes that they are in fact in danger, this is going to be very useful knowledge. Releasing owls is a very complicated business because you have to make absolutely sure that the bird has a reasonable chance of survival, and this involves making sure that the bird can catch live prey. This is the most critical part of release. I think without owls, we'd have a real problem with the rodent population. They have really evolved as a control on rodents. Did you get any owl meat from the butcher shop?
I was standing there waiting for somebody to serve me, and the chap in the butcher shop caught my eye, and he said, "You're after owl meat, I suppose?" And I said, "Yes." The fellow next to me sort of looked at me queerly, and then he finally summoned up enough courage to say, "I didn't know they sold owl meat here."
Oh, dear. Been wondering what he'd been eating.
Yeah. Just like your story when you were building the house here, people wanted to know why you kept owls, and you said it was to sell the eggs.
That's right. That's
I don't
right.
think they ever bought any eggs from then on.
Local stores since then.
Yeah.
Remember the time we were operating on an owl in Peterborough, and we had two vets, rather young vets there, who helping us, and of course I was holding the owl and leaning over the owl to look in the eyeballs. We thought the owl was completely anesthetized, and suddenly out comes this great claw right on my bosom, and I tell you, I leapt up in the air, and the two chaps were so embarrassed they didn't know what to do. They just kind of wrung their hands and said, "Oh dear, oh dear."
Yeah, you nearly had a mastectomy right on the spot. Yeah.
Right on the spot, yeah.
Morag, come on, Morag.
Hi.
Oh, yes,
Come
come on. Come on, Morag.
Come on, Morag, here.
Guess what, Morag?
Morag.
Guess what?
Are you hungry?
Oh, numbers.
Are you hungry?
Oh.
Oh boy, is that ever good.
Yes. Morag. Oh, just whipping.
That's
Yes.
trouble with giving
Don't
her
let her take it in the living
biscuit.
room.
Terry
Here's your
lifting her
friend Terry.
whiskers.
Here's your friend Terry.
You're not pleased at all about Morag being here.
That's pretty good. Oh, yeah. Oh,
Morag.
your sound effects are really something, Morag, yeah.
This is the typical defensive position of an owl when someone approaches. There is a kind of an invisible line at a certain point distant from the owl, and once you cross that line, they get very upset. And I've got a nice meal for this owl here. We really have to feed owls live mice, and it's amazing how they change their whole attitude towards food. After 1 or 2 days on live mice, he isn't going to want a dead mouse anymore. This is the way they take them. After he's killed the mouse, he would grab it by the head, crush the skull, and usually tip back his head, and down goes the mouse. Normally, about half the mouse at the full gulp, and then a little bit of a pause, and then the hindquarters and the tail go with the second gulp. Well, how did that taste? I have a pellet here from this owl. The pellet is formed in the muscular stomach of the owl, and it's just brought up by stages. Finally, the owl opens his mouth and shakes his head, and out it comes. It has absolutely no odor at all. It's completely clean, and it dries out very quickly, and when dry, you can dissect them and learn what the owl has eaten. He had 3 mice this size last night, and this is the residue of those 3 mice. All of the toenails from the mice, all of the teeth, parts of the hip, and usually a part of the tail, usually the small end of the tail. This is our first stage hospital cage. It's when they come in badly injured and I have to get them under a heat lamp. We've got one on up there. Or hand feed them, or manipulate them in any way. It's a very small cage at a very convenient height. The owl feels secure in here, and he can, the territory is so small he doesn't feel he has to defend anything. He just sits there, and really you can do almost anything with them. This one had a leg put in a cast a few weeks ago. I think I can show you the cast there. It goes all the way up to the knee from the base of the metatarsus. There. Right up to the top. Whoops, there. He's a little bit unsteady on it. It's going to come off in a week's time, that cast. Of course, we'll also take an X-ray when we take the cast off, and that will tell us a lot about the bone.
Dr. Featherstone, how do you recognize a healthy owl?
Really the same as you'd tell any healthy animal, from the brightness of his eye, the color of his mouth, a nice pink healthy color, and his plumage.
Are owls easy specimens to work with?
You have to take great care not to lose a finger. The commonest injuries owls sustain are probably being shot, flying into overhead wires, being caught in traps, and being hit by cars. Being shot probably being the most prevalent injury. Now, it's the right wing that was fractured.
And what have you done to that wing?
Well, we put a stainless steel pin in, and the pin is still in there. And what we want to do today is to make quite sure that it's 100% and we can release him. Now, I should explain that all bones are hollow. We put the pin in the upper fragment and push it right through, and that comes out at a point somewhere further up the owl's leg. And we pull it back to here, and then we align the fracture site like that and push the pin back in. We then either cut the excess away with heavy shears, or if we pre-cut it, we just snap it off, and this buries the point inside the bone. This was the X-ray taken when the owl was first presented to us nearly 4 months ago. When we received this bird, he was in a state of shock. His right wing was fractured. He was completely unable to fly or move. It would have been a question of destroying him or of operating on him. The fracture is fairly obvious. It's right through both the ulna and the radius. What we usually do is to take care of the larger bone. We went ahead, operated, the bird went home, and here's the picture that we took today. And I think you can see that, well, in our opinion, this is completely satisfactory. You've got new callus here. The overall picture of the wing is that it's 100% straight. After a physical examination, coupled with this X-ray, I would say quite definitely this bird can be released and should lead a 100% normal life.
06181.
06181. 81. All right.
Now you're going to put it in the right leg?
Let's put it on the right leg. The owls that we release are all banded in the hope that if they are recovered somewhere, we will have a history on the length of time that the bird was able to support itself and how far it went from the point of release.
Now let's see if it's circular and lots of room there. Yeah, I think that's pretty good.
Yeah, that turns around all right.
Well,
there, I
got the
think
number.
that's all right. Yeah, got the numbers.
It's all ready to go.
She's
huh?
all ready. This is your big moment, kid.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, when we release an owl, we have very mixed feelings. There's a real feeling of accomplishment. We have been the instrument of this owl being returned to the wild, and that makes us feel very good. That's good for the ego and makes us feel satisfied. On the other hand, there's a real pang as well. We have the feeling, is the bird going to make it? I know it's been safe here and I could keep it for the rest of its life in comfort and health, but it wouldn't really be serving the function for which it was evolved and designed. So we have to let it go if there's a 50-50 chance it's going to make it in the wild, but I can't deny a feeling of sadness. It's gone. Over that way.